Recorded Books Incorporated presents an unabridged recording of All for the Union, the Civil War Diary and Letters of Elisha Hunt Rhodes, edited by Robert Hunt Rhodes, and narrated by Norman Dietz. This work, copyrighted 1985 by Robert Hunt Rhodes, is recorded by arrangement with Orion Books, a division of Crown Publishers Incorporated. This recording is copyrighted 1991 by Recorded Books Incorporated. Jeffrey C. Ward, author of the 1990 PBS series The Civil War, contributed a foreword to this edition of the Diary of Elisha Hunt Rhodes. He writes, One March day in 1862, General George B. McClellan, never averse to a little favorable publicity, granted passes to a small party of influential civilians that included Nathaniel Hawthorne and a British correspondent, Edward Dicey of The Spectator, to travel out from Washington into Virginia and report firsthand on his elaborate preparations for the Peninsula Campaign. Hawthorne, Dicey, and their companions were suitably dazzled by the miles of supply wagons, the busy fleet of transports that clogged the Potomac, the wharves and river steamers crowded with eager, cheering men in blue. It seemed to Dicey impossible that such an army would not sweep all before it. Toward evening, the little party headed back toward town, only to be halted on the Virginia side of the long chain bridge across the Potomac. For hours we found it impossible to cross, Dicey wrote, as a division of 16,000 men were marching over, with colors flying and bands playing. Regiment after regiment defiled past us. The men were singing, shouting, cheering. They chanted John Brown's hymn, and the heavy tramp of 1,000 feet beat time to that strange, weird melody. As the New England regiments passed our train, they shouted to us to tell the people at home that we had seen them in Dixie's land and on the way to Richmond. Ah me! How many, I wonder, of those who flitted before us in the twilight came home themselves to tell their own story? One of the New Englanders who marched across that chain bridge and did come home to tell his own story was Elisha Hunt Rhodes of the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteer Infantry, just a few days short of his 20th birthday, but already promoted to sergeant major. Over the course of the war, he would cross the Potomac at least 25 more times in pursuit of victory and take part in every major campaign undertaken by the great Northern Army named for that river, from First Bull Run to Appomattox. Rhodes had had to obtain his widowed mother's permission before he could join the Army as a 19-year-old private in July of 1861. He would leave it a little over 4 years later as the colonel in command of his regiment, a seasoned soldier at 23. His account of what he lived through, lovingly compiled by his great-grandson and published here for the first time for a wide audience, is, I believe, one of the finest of the war, fresh, vivid, understated, utterly free of the ornate and imitative style with which more learned veterans managed to put some distance between themselves and the ghastly sights they saw. Rhodes had the genuine soldier's innate distrust of false heroics. At its first taste of gunfire, he faithfully reports, his regiment immediately laid down without waiting for orders. But his pages are filled nonetheless with instances of heroism, and it is hard for a modern reader to understand how any man, enduring what Rhodes and his friends endured at Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, the Wilderness, Cold Harbor, or any one of a score of other battles, could have held on to his sanity. No single soldier can be said to be representative of all his comrades. Armies, perhaps especially American armies, are made up of idiosyncratic individuals. But surely Elisha Hunt Rhodes can safely be said to have been speaking for most of his fellow soldiers when, a few days before he was mustered out of the Army, he looked back on his military career with understandable pride. I have been successful in my Army life, he wrote, simply because I have always been ready and willing to do my duty.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?